Right. So, why motivation is bullshit and how you can stay focused without pushing yourself hard. Now, what people do is they tend to just search for motivation to work, uh, and some of them they feel that the discipline is the most important, and of course, discipline is more important. But how to just work without learning all these things? What's the shortest path to the focus? So we'll see the things one by one. Okay, so in this video, we'll cover up what kind of motivation is bullshit, because these days, like all of these people's, all of these YouTube gurus are making videos upon, you know, motivation, and the other half is making, you shouldn't be focusing on motivation. You should be just focusing upon uh, the discipline. Now, the second thing that we'll be covering up is the scientific method of long-term motivation. What are the things that you can do to have this focus, that motivation for a long term? And then what are the short-term hacks that you can do? Because to have that long-term motivation, you need practice. And meanwhile, you need to have that short-term hacks, right? And then a quote that I have been pondering upon from past 3 to 4 months, and that has helped me to generate great revenues in the past 3 to 4 months. So let's dive into the things one by one. Okay, so what kind of motivation is bullshit? Let's see. So the first thing is YouTube videos. So what I used to do when I started my business, and when I just wanted to have the sales calls, because sales calls has been the most boring part of my business journey, honestly. So what I used to do was I used to listen to the videos from the Wolf of Wall Street, the motivation the Leonardo DiCaprio provides, uh, when he's training his team. So I used to get pumped up to do the sales calls, but those sales calls didn't went too good. And the reason for that is, the motivation from YouTube videos can be for like 5 minutes, but the sales calls is for like 30 minutes, right? So right after that 5 minutes, that motivation goes away, and then you are on your own. So YouTube videos is one thing that you need to avoid. The second thing is someone pumping you up, like your family, your friends, your spouse, your girlfriend, boyfriend, your business partner. You shouldn't be needing any pumping up, right? Because just suppose when that person is not around you to just amp you up, what will you do at that time? You shouldn't be depending upon someone. The third thing is Instagram Reels. Now, people keep on sending all these reels by Andrew Tate, by all the athletes, by UFC players, right? So, and these are like 30 seconds reels, and you send that video, and then you start scrolling on the Instagram feed again. So, this is just some binge watching. This is just uh, having that feeling of doing something but not actually doing it, and still staying poor. So, you need to avoid all of this stuff. Now let's just focus on what are the scientific methods of long-term motivation, right? This is one of the most important things that we'll be talking about. And if you want to have long-term motivation, you need to play with your dopamine. And the reason that I say to play with dopamine is because I like to do things scientifically. I do not want to, just say that you should be disciplined, make your schedule. Okay, yeah, you should be making your schedule, but how to make your schedule and how to follow it up, right? So you have to play with your dopamine at that time. And now we'll be talking about this thing in two parts. One is dopamine and what is dopamine actually, and then what is healthy dopamine, how to get it. Now, what is dopamine? Now, dopamine is a neurotransmitter that plays a role in pleasure, motivation, and learning. Now, the second thing is dopamine tells you how motivated you are. Now, the level of your dopamine in your system tells you that what's your motivation, right? Now, if suppose you have been drinking alcohol, at that times you're highly motivated, but you're not able to focus, of course. When you smoke tobacco, you are more motivated than the rest of the people. But once the effect of that subsides away, you are back to normal, right? Or if suppose you are having an exercise, right? At that point of time, you're highly motivated because there is a dopamine spike. Or when you feel continuous stimulation, your baseline drops, your baseline level of dopamine drops. Now, this is a thing like, suppose you have been having alcohol every day. Then next day, after some times, you want to have more alcohol than the previous days because you're not able to have that kind of a dopamine. Or suppose when you have been watching porn every day, you want to watch it for a prolonged amount of time because that is not giving you that dopamine spike. The thing is, your level of the baseline dopamine drops and you feel very drowsy because of that. How much dopamine is in your system dictates the quality of your life. Now, suppose I'll give you an example for this. Now, you might have seen that people who keep on working every day, they feel that their quality of life is better than the quality of life of a person who is partying every day. Or just think, guys, that you see a lot of actors, a lot of celebrities, they commit suicide. You feel that he is having everything in his life, but why did he commit the suicide? Now what happens is that you compare your dopamine in your system to your past self's dopamine, right? And if you have that continuous stimulation, if at that times you do not have any dopamine in your system, the quality of your life becomes dull. And this is the reason actually that a lot of people commit suicides. It's the reason is dopamine. Like, if you do not have dopamine in your system, like, you know, people commit suicide because of that. And a lot of antidepressants has dopamine releasing substances. Now, what is one of the most important things to remember? And this is one of the most important things. As you age, you start to party hard, and the dopamine is always up. Then, while working, you will say, I am burnt out. Well, suppose, like, you start making money, right, with age. And then, of course, with money, you start partying more, like, you have better parties every weekend. And then, at that point of time, the level of your dopamine is on the rooftop. But next day, when you start working, you do not feel that kind of a dopamine, and then you feel that you are burnt out. But actually it's not the problem with you not doing the work. You are not able to do the work. It's a problem with you that you are having lot of dopamine spikes and your baseline level of dopamine has dropped a lot. Now what is healthy dopamine and how to release it? The first thing is cold showers. will give you calm and focus. But what I've seen that and what I felt that whenever I have cold showers, I have that smooth release of dopamine for like 5 to 6 hours. So this thing can really help you out. Even if you feel depressed, take cold showers. It will help you out. Now, hard work and avoid hard work for reward. Like suppose if you have done something really well today, right? You have worked hard. Do not give yourself a reward at the end because then you will be loving the reward, not the hard work. So try to have that focused state, that flow state while you do the work. And you should be having that smooth release of dopamine. Avoid partying on Sundays because then you'll be loving Sundays more and you'll not be able to work. If you love to party, just have it on weekdays someday. Just try that. I feel that this should work for you. Effort is great. Hard work is a thing I love. This is one thing, one affirmation that you can have. Effort, right? Do not focus on the reward. Effort should be great. Hard work should be the thing that you love. And this is another affirmation that you can use. This is very painful, but because it is very painful, it will release my dopamine later. You are doing that thing by choice and you love doing it. This is with dopamine. This is with the hard work, right? All right, so what are the short-term hacks to release dopamine? Now, the first thing is do not fill up your stomach. And the reason for that is whenever you fill your stomach, you will be like, that I do not want to do the work because just take an example like 10,000 years ago. Why did people used to hunt just to fill up their stomachs? And suppose you have already filled up your stomach, you won't be able to do your best work. The second thing is, and this is what I have been doing, I'm not suggesting anyone to just take it because these are like I do not have any medical degree. These are just the things that I have been focusing upon. Sometimes I try L-tyrosine because it helps me to have that smooth release of dopamine for like 1 to 2 hours. And this is a thing that I consume either in morning or I consume it late night whenever I am building some plans or something. Now another thing is that you can use maca root extract, and this is the thing that is really good. Maca root is kind of a root, a natural root which is grown, I think, somewhere in China or something, but I really do not know that. But yeah, I've tried it and it has worked a lot for me. The next thing is intermittent fasting. Now, if I talk about intermittent fasting, just take an example of this that earlier, what did early humans used to do? They woke up, they went for a hunt, spent 2 to 3 hours or 5 hours on the hunt. They came back, their wives used to cook the food for them, and then they used to eat. And what cereal companies have been telling us is that breakfast is the most important meal of the day and we shouldn't be skipping the breakfast. But this is not right. This is some kind of an agenda that has been done by uh, all these cereal companies. So just try to live like how early humans used to do. Just eat food for 6 to 8 hours and then have that non-eating window of 16 to 18 hours. Just try that, you'll love it. Now, a quote to remember for success, and this is a quote that I have been pondering upon from past 3 to 4 months, and that it has really worked out well for me. Your experience of dopamine would depend on the prior dopamine generating activity. I'll explain you this with an example. So I do not love to take strategy calls. really. And I do not feel enthusiastic on strategy calls. Then I read this quote, and what I did was, and I knew that there's only one thing that I hate more than taking the strategy calls is reviewing my calls, reviewing my strategy calls, listening to my voice. So what I used to do was, it takes me 45 minutes to take a strategy call. So I book all my calls at a gap of 1.5 hours. So what I do in that, I take a strategy call, and then I review it. And then what happens is my level of dopamine just drops. And when I am taking the strategy calls, it increases again, and I feel more enthusiastic on the calls. And this has been one of the main reasons that our closing rate was at the highest in March. And then what else you can say with this? Take an example of, like, you party on Saturday or you party on Sunday, and then you do not like to work on Monday. It's not because you are exhausted. It's because you have been feeling drowsy because of low dopamine. Because your experience of dopamine would depend upon the prior dopamine generating activity. So you can apply this at different parts of your life. So yeah, this was pretty much how you can just focus upon certain things, and some things that you can really work upon. Because I do not want you to feel just motivated for 5 minutes, or I do not want you to struggle with discipline again and again. Just, you know, do it scientifically.